Good morning. This is Tracy Hales Vass, right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM. Today I'm talking to Sarah Baker, author in many different genres, talking to us today from Albuquerque. All right, good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Tracy.
I really enjoyed reading, is it Dassas Cormier?
Dassas Cormier, yes.
Dassas, yes. I liked him. He's a bit of a rogue character.
Thank you.
And that is, the one I read was Murder in Marshall's Bayou.
That's the first in the series.
Okay.
And right now there are 4 out. A 5th book is going to be coming out this coming year, I hope.
Great. I like the setting, 1920s New Orleans, and the characters are great, and he's an interesting guy.
Thank you.
Yes. And so the other books will continue with his adventures?
Yes, they do. They are all set in the 1920s. The last one will be in 29, and during the crash of the stock market, so an interesting time. But
yes.
Each one of the books is set in southwest Louisiana, except for the second one, which is actually in New Orleans. So it's really fun.
It was fun to read. And you're familiar with New Orleans and Louisiana.
I am. I grew up in New Orleans. My parents were from southwest Louisiana, so I know that area and spent a lot of time down in the real Marshall's Bayou, which is actually Johnson's Bayou, sort of, loosely based on it.
But that's not all you do.
No.
The Dassas Cormier books are written under S.H. Baker.
Yes, they are.
But you have other names and other genres that you write in. I
do. I write romance under Sarah Storm with an E at the end. And I also write the really hot stuff, erotica, under Lydia Parks.
Fascinating. So now, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, how do you keep all these straight?
That's a great question, because sometimes I'm afraid I don't. I've discovered that when I'm signing books, I can't talk to the person I'm signing for, because I have in the past signed the wrong name and had to switch the book out very quickly. I don't recommend to other writers writing under a lot of pseudonyms, and I only did it because the genres I write in are so different that people don't want to accidentally pick up something they aren't expecting to read, I guess, would be a good way to put that.
I understand that, yes.
So, yeah, it's been interesting trying to keep all the names straight.
I can imagine. But not only that, I mean, they're very different genres, and you have to keep the genre straight.
Definitely have to do that. It's been fun for me. I started out writing, or was first published in romance, but I always wanted to write mystery. And I knew that I could not do too much of a crossover, because generally mystery readers don't necessarily read romance.
That's probably true, yeah.
Yeah, but it was fun for me, because when Dassas came to me, he was kind of, like you say, he's kind of a rogue. He's also got a lot of a romantic side to him, I guess. That I had a lot of fun with, even though it wasn't a romance novel, or any of them were.
But it's got some romance in there.
It does.
That's
Can't
great.
help myself.
That's okay. So, how many books total do you have out right now?
I have at least 20 novels published. I've also done a few, 1 or 2 self-published novels. I started teaching a class for UNM's continuing education OSHER program on self-publishing.
Oh.
When I agreed to do that, I had not yet self-published, so I had to very quickly go figure out how to do it.
That makes sense, right?
And I've had a lot of fun with that. Now I'm starting to publish my backlist, so the novels that are no longer in print, I've started putting online. And it's been a fun kind of thing to do. So I'm considered a hybrid author, I suppose.
I would think so, yes. Well, I guess we should tell the audience a little bit about what Dassas is all about.
Sure. So my grandfather was Cajun, so one of the Acadians in Louisiana. I didn't actually know him, but a lot of his family members I knew. And to me, Dassas formed out of it was really the result of something kind of strange. When my grandmother died, she left behind this box full of letters. And the letters were everyday communications between her and her family. And it was from these letters that were mostly set in the 1920s that sort of the details of a lot of my novels of that setting came from. So Dassas grew out of that. He is part Cajun and part other European ancestry, and that's kind of common in that part of the country. So he gets to sort of fit into both worlds and maybe neither completely, which makes him kind of an interesting character for me.
He is.
And he's somebody who's gone out into the world, left Southwest Louisiana, tried to do other things, and ended up coming home. And so that's where he comes from.
And he finds himself embroiled in murders.
Yes. Has to do that, or it wouldn't be a mystery.
That's
right.
That's right. I enjoyed following him as he tried to solve these murders.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, first of all.
Yeah, very much so. When you write, do you write like one full book of the murder mystery and then one full book of the romance, or do you stick to one at a time, or how does that work?
Well, when I've been writing the murder mysteries, I stick to the one I'm working on. What I've discovered is if I try to work on 2 or 3 novels at the same time, characters start wandering into the wrong book.
Right.
And so I try not to do that. I have in the past, when I was under contract for books, had to work on more than one at a time, and that did get a little confusing.
I can imagine.
So now I get a chance to sort of focus on one, and I'm really focused on the last one in the series that is under contract now.
Great.
But I'm also forming some other books, so it is kind of a strange situation for me. I recently retired from my full-time job as an engineer, so That's been nice to really focus on writing now. But it also means that I've got so many opportunities, it's tougher to focus on one.
Anybody who says that retirement is the time to take it easy doesn't know what they're talking about.
Isn't that the truth? I keep waiting for the day when I have nothing to do.
Right. Yes. May it never come.
Oh, okay. I'll quit waiting then.
So that's an interesting life, and it's an interesting combination of talents. How do you feel that being an engineer informs your writing?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've only written a couple of novels now with engineers in them. I don't know. Working as an engineer, I guess I didn't feel the need to do that for a long time.
Right.
And of course they're romances, so that makes it kind of fun. When I started writing, I felt like I was using the other side of my brain. I'd come home from work and just shut down the engineering side and start writing and keep going until I had to go to bed, and then get up and be an engineer again. It was fun, but one of the reasons I started writing under a pseudonym was because I didn't really want my coworkers to know that I was writing romance. Right. But that didn't stay a secret for too terribly long, so I guess I'm okay with that. I don't know if it helped me so much in the writing, but what it helped me with was learning to write. When I first started, I didn't really start out to be a writer, never thought about being a writer, was sort of playing around on the Internet back when the Internet was new, doing some fan fiction, which didn't even have a name yet. It was so new. And had somebody on the other end of the computer, somebody I couldn't see, tell me that I needed to go write a romance novel because that's sort of what I was writing. And then I discovered this person, and I assume it's a woman, but I'm not even sure of that because there was no graphic interface at that time, and you couldn't really look up people on the Internet. And she said, or she or he said, I'm actually a New York editor, and I edit books, and you need to go write a novel, a romance novel. So being a good engineer, I can kind of follow directions.
Right.
So I started my first romance novel without a clue of what I was doing, and made all the beginner mistakes. That never got the first one published. Never will, I'm sure. Don't want to actually now. But at the time, I thought I was ready to go, and then I really lucked out because I submitted that book to everyone in the world. I am sure that in New York there were a whole bunch of notes like, do not ever open another envelope from this crazy lady, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I lucked out because of the last place I submitted to was a small publisher. And the publisher called me. And she actually called me and talked on the phone to me for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Yes.
I mean, I knew even then that was amazing, but now I really understand how amazing that was.
Right.
But she was telling me, she said, you have some potential as a writer, you just don't know what you're doing. So she gave me a list of books to read, and to go read these books, start book number 2, put this one away, and then when you're ready, submit another book to me. So I took the books that she suggested, I read through them. I ended up somewhat accidentally published with a major publishing house because of the internet being new. Yeah, I'd entered an idea on the internet that AOL Time Warner was doing, where they were running a contest, and they had people post the first 3 chapters of a book, and then all the rest of the people involved would rate it, and the top 1 or 2 in each genre then was reviewed by the editors. And they picked mine for the romance novel one month. I was really excited about it.
Oh, yes. Very good.
And then 3 days after it came out, the line shut down. So.
Oh, my gosh.
It was an interesting experience.
Yes.
Learn lessons all kinds of interesting ways.
Yes, you do. So now that you're retired, what's your writing process?
Well, I have not gotten into a routine yet. I've been very much involved with the classes through UNM that I'm teaching, and also with Southwest Writers. I've been the president for the last 2 years. And now that that's coming to an end at the end of this year, and I'll have a break between some classes, I'll be stepping back into a process. But I know that as I age, I can't follow the same process as I did when I was younger, because I can't sit in a chair for as long without it getting a little tiring. So I started looking at maybe starting around 10 o'clock in the morning, writing through for a few hours, taking a break, doing a little bit of walking and exercise, and then coming back and writing for a few more hours and just seeing how that goes. In the past, I've had trouble making myself stop and getting up and doing things. I'm finding that's not the trouble anymore. That's a good thing, really.
That is.
It's a little healthier to get up now and then.
And at what point do you take the draft to the writers group?
I have a critique group right now. I haven't had a critique group for a number of years, so I haven't really had a place to take a draft. I've done my own editing, but it's because I already had so much experience working with editors that I felt comfortable doing that. And now that I have a critique group, our group is really working on short stories. So I've been doing a lot of short stories on the side also. And that's really been fun for me. I had not spent a lot of time doing short stories before. It's a different medium completely.
They are, yes.
But, it's really fun. So my critique group has not seen any of my novels yet in a draft format, but I'm thinking that as I work on the mystery, once I get it finished, then I'll be ready to take it to the critique group and see what they think of the process of critiquing a novel.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Would you read something for us so our audience can hear your voice, your writing voice?
Certainly, I'd be happy to.
Great.
And for me, the fun part was that Marshall's Bayou in the mystery series is written in first person, whereas the romance novels generally are not. So I had a lot of fun hearing Dassas', I don't know, I think it's channeling maybe, I'm not sure.
It could be.
Okay, yes, I'll be glad to. I'll read the first part of Murder in Marshall's Bayou, the first one, if that's okay.
Great.
Chapter 1, Marshall's Bayou, Louisiana, September 26, 1924. I never thought I'd look forward to returning to Marshall's Bayou. Nothing ever happened there. Even when the rest of the world was listening to jazz and racing around in motor cars, I knew I'd find everything at home just as it had been the day I left. Leaning over the side of the boat, watching the black water slip by, that thought was somehow comforting. I was 24 with the bitter taste of duty fresh in my mouth, swearing I'd never return when I left the marsh right at the end of the war. Burying two brothers has a way of making things bitter, especially when I was the one who wanted to go and I was the one left behind. Yet, 5 years later, I returned home, not as Dassas Cormier, conquering hero, saver of damsels, civilization, and decency. No, I returned as Dassas, failed cowboy, failed roughneck, and most recently, failed lawman. I rode the mailboat with my tail between my legs. If there had been some way to return in the middle of the night, I would have, but there wasn't. Determined not to look like a thief slinking in, I climbed up and balanced on the side of the boat as it approached the waiting group. Then I hopped onto the ancient dock and tied the rope to a cleat as if I didn't have a care in the world. I even tipped my hat and flashed my best smile to Widow Clausen and her daughter, Celia. Dassas Cormier, you dirty dog, get your ass over here and let me look at you. The dock shook under Harley Hebert's weight as he marched toward me. Realizing he'd spoken a bit too loudly, he reddened and muttered an apology to the ladies for his language before grabbing my shoulder and hauling me into Terrio's. Terrio's dance hall was dark and dusty as if abandoned, but Buddy Terrio leaned on the bar, a rag draped over his substantial shoulder, and Isaac Broussard sat on a stool, smiling as usual. If not for a few gray hairs on the two of them, I would have sworn I'd stepped back into an afternoon in 1918. My word, I can't believe it. The traveling boy is back, Buddy said. You too good to drink with us now? Of course he ain't, Harley answered. Whiskey's on me. Whiskey? I asked, glancing around. Terrio's wasn't as well hidden as most speakeasies. Sure, Harley said. Who's going to stop us? There ain't no law around here no more. What happened to Red? I asked. Dead, Buddy said, shaking his head slowly. Shot and left to die out in the marsh. My stomach clenched to the news. When? About 2 weeks ago. Who did it? An escaped convict from Texas. They caught him? No, but he robbed the bank in Orange a few days before Red was killed. Buddy sighed. Now we can't find a soul who's willing to wear the badge. The thought of Red's death hit me hard. I had fond memories of the burly redhead who'd been the only law in Marshall's Bayou since way before I was born. He had helped me out of a scrape or two and even taken me under his wing when I was a kid. I don't suppose you'd be interested, Buddy eyed me strangely. Bien sûr, Isaac said. You have experience. I shrugged. I'll think about it. My three drinking partners exchanged meaningful glances as Buddy filled a shot glass and placed it in front of me. Now, I had no intention of wearing a badge in Marshall's Bayou, or anywhere else for that matter, but I was a firm believer in keeping all options open as long as possible. That was the only reason I didn't turn the offer down flat.
I think it's great that throughout this prohibition is a theme, but yet they seem to get around it.
They do, don't they?
Yes, which is probably true to the times.
It probably is, especially in Louisiana, maybe.
Right, right.
I did have a lot of fun with that. I have a romance series set in the same place at the same time period.
Oh.
And one of the heroines in the book is definitely protesting everything from getting the right, not having the right to vote, and prohibition, and just is a fun character to play with.
Oh.
And I had a great time writing her.
Yeah, it's a good time, and it's the area is unique in a lot of ways.
It is. That part of Louisiana, the southwest corner of Louisiana, was very isolated. So, in really, even though it was the 1920s, in most ways it was still very Victorian.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that comes out, I think, in the novels, or at least I hope it does.
It does.
But it was interesting being so isolated, almost like being on an island. And it was a lot of fun when the very first car shows up. So
oh, yeah.
Had a great time with that.
Yes.
And also the fact that all these people were raising cattle in that part of the state, which is where my grandparents were raising cattle. So that was a fun part to write for me, too.
Yeah, that surprised me. But I know so little of that area. So the setting is definitely a major character also
It
in
was
this
for
book.
me.
Mm-hmm.
It was important that it feel like home. I don't think I wrote necessarily all the gritty things that were happening in Louisiana at that time, and it was part of the story that wasn't what I wanted to tell.
Uh-huh.
Race relations were, of course, a huge issue still at that time.
Oh, I'm sure.
But in this part of the state, it was very isolated and very much just those two main groups of people, the Cajuns and the other European settlers. So that was, to me, the fun part.
And I think it was interesting that it has a definite small town feeling with, I mean, people that went to high school together are still hanging out together.
True. Probably know each other a little too well.
Right. So are your other characters like Harley? Do we see them in the other Dassas?
They
Cormier?
are. They're in the other books too.
Great.
Isaac Broussard is actually one of the heroes in one of the romances. So I have some characters that walk across the screens in those two sets of novels that were published by different publishing houses.
Oh, great.
So that, to me, I was so glad they let me do that. That was so much fun.
Oh, yes.
But Harley and Isaac and Buddy Terrio and all those guys are in every book.
Good. Yeah. I liked them a lot.
Thank you.
Now, you have a website that the audience can go see you at?
I actually have really focused now on my Facebook site.
Okay.
So I have a Facebook site for S.H. Gurr / Sarah Storm. So both authors are on the same Facebook site.
Okay.
And I try to use that to keep people updated on what's happening. And then I mostly rely on things like the Amazon sites for my book. And that's been interesting. I have had not to work quite so hard on upgrading a website by not having one specifically for each author.
Yeah.
That got tiring.
I can imagine. There's a lot of upkeep just for one.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. At one point I had 3 Facebook sites, 3 Twitter sites, and 3 websites,
wow.
and 3 blogs.
Oh, my gosh. And that's when you were working full-time, too.
And that's when I was working, yes. I don't know how I did all that.
I wonder when you slept.
Probably while I was writing a few times.
Probably. I love the one website you have that's called The Inadvertent Author.
Yes.
That says a lot right there.
Thank you. I want to get that. It's a blog site that I really want to work on some more, so I'm looking forward to getting a chance to do that. I set it up when we went to Ireland this last trip and was hoping to do some blogging from Ireland, but I got so involved with what was going on there I didn't, so I guess I'll share pictures on it belated.
That's okay. You enjoyed it at the moment. That's
oh,
good.
I did.
That's
I did.
Great. And will we see that Ireland in another novel of yours?
I think so. I identify so much with Ireland after being there a couple of times that I just can't help but write about. I think the side of it will be more along the lines of the Irish immigrant in the U.S.
Oh, good.
And I have one of those in one of my novels, but I think I want to spend a little bit more time on that character, on those types of characters, and how they adjust to the different world and what they bring with them, because that's the exciting part for me, was that really fierce independence that the Irish have, that I think was what they brought to us.
So on the front cover of Murder in Marshall's Bayou, well, who is that? There's a little kid there.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
The publisher found that photo, and I thought the house is just perfect. It
is.
Reminds me so much of my grandparents' houses.
Oh.
And so I love the photo and the way they made it look like an old photo album with the little corners on the pictures.
Exactly.
And so she did, the publisher did that with all of them when they released them a second time with new covers so that they would all look alike. And I thought that was wonderful.
I really like it.
But, you don't really get a say on that
True.
as an author.
That's true, so it's a good thing you did like it.
It is.
Yes. So what are you working on now?
Well, besides the last of the Dassas series, and I did start on that a while ago and put it aside. It's been really interesting because I got a chance to work with an audio publisher here on that mystery, the first of the mystery series. amazing audio publisher, Siren Audio, and they're local. And she did my first book as a full cast audio.
Oh.
So what that means is that all of the characters have real voices now,
Yes.
including Dassas. He has an amazing voice.
Does he have an accent?
He does. He
Great.
did his Cajun accent, and it was just a real blast to work with this group as they recorded this book. But it also means that because one of the major characters is dying in the last book, I'm having a hard time killing him off.
Oh, I can see that.
He has a real voice.
That makes it a little harder, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It really does. So I'm working on that one, but I'm also working on a series set in the distant future. And that, to me, is going to be really fun to work with. That sort of relates back to my work in sustainability with engineering.
Oh.
So I want to do something with that.
Oh, that's interesting.
See how that works out.
Is that a new genre you'll be dabbling in?
It is for me. It'll be one of its. I actually have two books outlined, and one of them is a bit of a romance, and one of them is a bit of a mystery. So in that way, they're not really new genres.
Mm-hmm.
But to set them in the distant future,
yes,
and work on that aspect is different for me. It's not easy. I've decided that's a tough way to write.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Because there are so many possibilities for the way the future would look that
That's
deciding
true.
on one and sticking to it's tough.
Oh, and keeping the continuity, right.
Yes, definitely.
But you have dabbled in paranormal.
I have.
Uh-huh.
I did. I actually have written quite a few vampire stories, and that's where the erotica books came in. I started out writing vampire short stories, and they turned into novels. And I've done a bit of a shapeshifter story and some ghost stories, shorter. And I've had a lot of fun with those. Those are, to me, are a blast.
I can see that they would be, yes. So what is your favorite genre to write in?
You know, I love writing mystery, and I think that I'll probably continue writing mystery. At the same time, the romance, to me, is such an important aspect of being able to write for women.
Right.
Generally, romances are for women, written by women, which is why they tend to not have not thought of quite as well, I believe.
It could
So
be.
to me, that's a really important thing, is that we continue to write about personal connections.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever I write in, it's going to have that aspect in it,
Right.
I know. Just can't help it.
That's great. Well, so we are just about out of time.
Well, this has been fun for me. I really appreciate the invitation, Tracy.
Well, I really enjoyed meeting you and sharing some events through Southwest Writers with you.
Yes, I'm so glad that you were able to participate in that. It's a wonderful group here in Albuquerque.
Yes, and we're trying to get carpools together when we go down, so we can go down to Albuquerque more often.
I am so glad to hear that. We'll look forward. We'll take you to lunch, so let me know when you're coming down.
I'll take you up on that.
Sounds great.
All right. Our audience can find your books on Amazon, right?
Yes, and in some of the local libraries and bookstores. So
great. Very
definitely.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure, Sarah. And
thank you.
And thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
You betcha. That was Sarah Baker, who writes as S.H. Baker, Sarah Stone, and Lydia Parks. This is Tracy Hales Vass, right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM in Farmington, New Mexico. You can contact me at righton@sanjuancollege.edu.